Now, before I start this story, I want everybody to know that these seeds are not recommended by me. I am telling a story of myself doing a ridiculously high amount. I do not want you to follow in my footsteps and do this. This is simply a story from my past, and hopefully it will act as a warning so that you do not try to recreate this yourself. I would not recommend anybody do something just because they saw it in a YouTube video. Even though these seeds are legal, it does not necessarily mean they are safe. Do your own research and never do anything just because you've heard about someone else doing it. So anyway, on to the story. Myself and my girlfriend proceeded to take a ridiculous amount of the seed extract. We took 25 seeds worth each of extract, and the recommended heavy dose is about 10 or more. So we almost tripled the heavy dose number, which is probably crazy and unreal, but I don't regret it because it did result in one of the most intense experiences of my life. That's not to say it wasn't one of the most painful either, though. Basically, we consumed the seeds in my bedroom, and we proceeded to wait for the effects to kick in. I was expecting to feel something within an hour, but this was not the case. About an hour and a half went by before we started getting the first warning signs, which were just some stomach discomfort. Within the next half hour, the stomach discomfort rose to almost an unbearable amount, in which time I was also getting quite a great deal of bronchial constriction, so I was having a tough time breathing, and my girlfriend started vomiting into a bucket profusely. In which case I was having a difficult time throwing up, so I put my fingers down my throat to try to force myself to throw up. The pain was so intense that my girlfriend was greatly considering calling an ambulance and taking us to the hospital because she was almost positive that I had killed us. Luckily, we did not end up going to the hospital, and we stuck it out. I laid on my back and just tried to breathe deeply and slowly. And it was about the 2-hour mark when the trip really started. It's hard for me to pinpoint how it began. All that I remember was I was laying on my bed on my back, and the next thing I know, I'm shooting through space, like almost like jumping through a wormhole, and I'm just shooting at the speed of light through space, and there's stars and planets, they're all just whoosh, zooming past me. And all of a sudden, my consciousness, which is what was shooting through space, I was aware that my body was still in a bed, but it was almost as if my consciousness lifted out of my body and was just whoosh, whoosh, sent out there. Kind of similar to a DMT experience, but very different, if that makes sense. And anyway, so as I'm being shot through space, I feel all of the atoms or the molecules that make up my consciousness, if this even makes any sense to you guys, they just started to vibrate really fast. And it got to the point where it was unbearable, and I literally felt myself getting torn apart. It was like every single atom in my body just shot out in every which way direction that it could possibly shoot in, until I had completely disappeared. I no longer was aware of having a body or even a consciousness, but somehow I still had thoughts. I was still able to perceive things in a very different way than in everyday reality. It was nothing like sitting here talking to you guys and thinking right now, but I still had some, I guess I would call it awareness. And this is when the trip started getting really interesting, because I remember thinking as all the atoms shot out into different directions and I was no longer a being or even a consciousness anymore. I remember thinking, how do my atoms know how to form back together? How do they know how to come back? Because I kept feeling like the individual particles had some kind of like a magnetic charge where they always knew to form back into my consciousness, and it didn't matter how far they spread out. Something in them always knew to come back together. And at this point, it was almost like I snapped out of the trip and I opened my eyes. And I turned over to look at my girlfriend who was laying beside me, and she opened her eyes at this moment and looked at me, and she said, "How do the atoms know how to come back together?"
I feel myself like splitting apart, like at the seams, just bursting. Molecules, atoms, everything flying every which way. And I was whole, but I was separate all at the same time, and I was everything, and I was in space. But somehow, my atoms knew how to get back together. I don't know how.
She was literally having the exact same experience as I was having at the exact same time. Now, after looking at her and realizing that we were having the same experience, we proceeded to have some kind of communication within our minds. I can't really explain it, and words wouldn't do it justice if I did. It was almost like an ESP type phenomenon where we were having a conversation and communicating via our thoughts. I can't really go into much more detail on this. It was just insane and out of this world. Now, as this was all going down, I was still having a bit of difficulty breathing, and so I remember thinking, just try swallowing, maybe that'll help. And I went to try to swallow, and for some reason I was physically incapable of swallowing, at which point I kind of freaked myself out, thinking, oh no, if I can't swallow, then maybe I'm going to stop breathing soon. And I was having a hard time remembering that I had a body. Now, it was raining outside, and I had the bright idea, hey, this will help me remember I have a body. I need to run outside into the rain so the raindrops can hit me, and when I feel them hit me, I'll be reminded that I'm real. So I ran outside in just my underwear, and I laid on my driveway, like spread out like this, and I remember feeling each raindrop hitting me, and it actually helped. It reminded me that I was real. As each drop hit me, it almost felt like it shot a vibration through me, like I could feel them going bzz, 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 and it was defining my physical form. Now after this, I calmed myself down a little bit, I got up and I went back into my house, and now there's a mirror right beside the door, and I looked in the mirror and instantly I was floored. The visuals were unlike anything I have ever seen before. My skin was glowing. It was like someone literally like turned up the brightness bar to the extent that you couldn't really see any details, but just this glowing, radiating, white, angelic looking skin. And at the same time, my head was kind of stretching and shrinking and breathing, like everything was breathing, very reminiscent of other substances. But now here's an effect that I had that I've never seen since or on anything else. Every time I would look, like if I would move my eyes quickly and look around, I would see these little white dots of exploding fireworks just going. They look just like fireworks that you would see on like the 4th of July or something. That was really cool, and I remember just being completely mesmerized by these fireworks. The other part of the visuals that were very interesting was the tracers. Now I'd move my hand like this and I'd see like it was almost like seconds had passed and I could still see where my hand used to be. Now tracers are common on most psychedelics, but personally, I don't get them. I've taken massive doses of LSD and never gotten tracers anywhere near this amount. The tracers were incredible. I was having a great time watching them in the air. Last but not least to the visual, or to this experience, it was very much intoxicating. It was kind of like being drunk out of your mind. What I mean is, I remember stepping and it was almost like the floor and the whole world was going woo, woo, really wonky. So with each step, I would almost collapse. I literally held onto the guardrail and like, I crawled myself up the stairs. It wasn't really that nauseating though for some reason. I just remember it was ridiculously difficult to keep my balance. Like if someone were to tell me to walk in a straight line, I would have just collapsed. So they were intoxicating to that extent. Now, last but not least, of the effects of these seeds, which myself and my girlfriend both experienced, which I think is remarkable, was some intense euphoria. I can remember laying in the bed and just feeling like this vibration of, I want to say this deep love feeling was just washing over me, up and down, very similar to an MDMA euphoria where you just feel like absolutely everything is right in the world, everything's going to be okay, and you're just in complete and utter bliss. Now, I remember talking to my girlfriend about her experience afterwards, and she said that she also experienced intense euphoria. She said something that I thought was interesting. She said she felt like she could orgasm with just her mind. Like if she thought about orgasming, then it would happen, which is pretty crazy and cool, if you ask me. I've never really heard of effects like this on any other substance. I can remember turning my head actually at one point when we were laying down and looking at her, and she was going like this with her hands and smiling. She looked like a complete lunatic, but it was cute and adorable and crazy. I would say that it lasted a total of 4 hours before I fell asleep. I'm sure if we didn't fall asleep, the experience would have continued, but they did put us in a very dreamy state, so that much is true. And they were very sedating. Like they kind of encouraged sleep. So after I was relaxed myself enough into realizing that I was going to be okay and my breath wasn't going to be cut off, which was very scary. Bronchial constriction is no joke. Not to mention the vasoconstriction was so intense, every time I'd step, it was like someone was stabbing knives in my legs. So these seeds are extremely, extremely uncomfortable. like over the top uncomfortable. I've read certain extraction processes will greatly diminish the discomfort, but at the cost of diminishing the effects. It's almost like if you want to experience these seeds properly, you have to just accept that you're going to be in some pain for a while, which I think is how nature intended you to experience these seeds, and it is how you should experience these seeds. Now, do I think these seeds are for everybody? Hell no. This is not an experience I will ever repeat. Mind you, again, I took a monstrous dose, and I can't recommend that anybody watching follows this and takes a monstrous dose. Now, with the proper extraction, you might get similar effects that I got at a heavy dose, so maybe around the 12 to 15 seed mark. I would really not push it beyond there. I don't know if there's potential to overdose on them. I mean, no one has ever died on them, but there still could be the potential there. Again, just because you heard me tell a story about my life isn't a reason to do something. I would feel terrible if somebody watched this video and then they just ran and jumped and tried these seeds. I'm giving as much warning as I possibly can to do your own research and to really make sure you're in the right mental state before you do anything like this. And with these seeds, you 100% need a trip sitter. I would never ever recommend taking these alone, even if you are an experienced psychonaut. Now, maybe in a lower dose you can get away with taking them alone, but at the extreme doses that I tried them at, I would never personally ever take that alone. I mean, I'd be too freaked out that I was losing my capability to breathe due to the constriction and probably call an ambulance on myself. This shit is not to be messed around with. Like, these seeds are very serious. Anyway, thank you guys for watching this video. That concludes this trip story. If you enjoyed this trip report, then please leave a comment below and let me know about what substances I can tell you about next that I may have experienced. I have never done trip reports before, so I hope you guys are liking this content, and if you're not, then let me know too, and I won't do any more trip reports. Thank you everyone who's supporting me on Patreon. You guys are amazing, amazing. Special thanks to these people in this annotation. You guys are especially awesome. If you guys want to get behind me and you support what I'm doing, please check out the link to Patreon. All the support I can get is greatly appreciated. Stay safe, everybody, and peace out. Now, one of the most incredible things that happened after this trip, which I can't believe I forgot to include in the main video just now, is they made me quit smoking. Now, this is absolutely crazy, and I probably forgot to include it in the video because I haven't smoked in years now, but I was actually an on and off smoker for about 10 years. And the next day after this trip, I remember trying to smoke and I had absolutely no interest in it. I remember specifically smoking and being like, Adam, you're supposed to like this. You enjoy doing this. And being like, but the hell is the damn point? From that moment on, I kept trying to force myself to smoke for the following month, at which point I just gave up because I hated cigarettes. It completely changed my mind about smoking. It's like it went into my body and removed the addiction from like my cells. I don't know what it did. It reminded me of Iboga in that regard, which has the power to cure addiction. It was insane. I can't believe I forgot to include this in the video. That's why I'm recording right now, later after I already filmed it. But yeah, it was one of the most remarkable things that's ever happened to me. Just completely lost the urge to smoke cigarettes, and I haven't smoked cigarettes since. I don't want to say this as a reason for people to go out and try these seeds to hopefully quit smoking. I don't think that it can happen with everybody. It was just a very unique thing that happened to me. However, I have done a lot of research into psychedelics, and I have read a lot of reports of people saying that they have helped them quit things like alcohol addiction, cigarettes, and addiction to opiates. So I'm living proof that psychedelics can cause you to quit addictions.